All right, everyone, welcome to the show. Very happy to have Penny Pearl on here. Now, what I really love about Penny is there's a lot of career coaches out there that they just focus on the surface level stuff of how do you have the perfect resume, the perfect technical resume, and that's gonna say all the perfect things so you can game the system and just squirm your way into some position that maybe you'll be satisfied with for the rest of your life. Now, Penny, she helps you get down to the root. She helps you position yourself by actually really understanding yourself and what you're best at and how to have conversations with people online and offline, like actually growing your network, actually creating a network that's going to help you out in the now, but sustain you for the future. So that when your work, and I don't know these things because me and Penny have worked together a bit together, but so it's not just like this, here, you do these things, get the job, but it's creating a system so that you have people, so that your friends are helping you find perfect opportunities. These other people in your network are helping you find perfect opportunities. And it's like creating this kind of inbound kind of pipeline where you have options. It's not just the grind of struggling, trying to get the job. It's like, hey, let's actually figure out what we're best at and then have this more of an attraction kind of style happen. So that just came out of me, Penny. The flow
Yeah,
just came out. I'm pretty sure that's pretty
it's
close on,
good.
but it's good. Okay, good. Well, okay. Well, how you doing? How you doing today? How are things up in Northern California over there?
Good. Spring has arrived, so that's the good news because we get snow where we are. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just beautiful here.
Yeah. And you have a beautiful black German Shepherd. What's your dog's name again?
Oliver, for
Oliver.
like olive, black olive.
Hmm. Okay, so with Oliver, can you like let him off, to kind of like run around, or is he a kind of dog that
Oh
can do that,
yeah,
kind of run around and come back and all that?
oh yeah. He even walks well on a leash too, which is unusual because when a dog has the opportunity to run a lot, it's hard to get them in the car and take them somewhere, and then have them walk well on a leash because they're so used to running around. But he does it all. So I love German Shepherds. They're smart.
It's nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Difficult puppies, but
Yeah. Just the energy, huh?
oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I had a good friend, and he had, two dogs that they would run and like chase rabbits. We're in Colorado, there's big like open fields. They would run and chase rabbits, and they could be mid chase, and he would whistle, and they would both run back immediately.
Hmm.
But I, had a yellow lab. Her name was Molly, and she would run, and I'd let her off, and I'd have to call and call and call to get her to come back. And I guess didn't train very well, but I just wanted to let her off her leash and run or do her own thing and get to chase rabbits and not just be tied up in the backyard all the time. So
Right.
sometimes I just if I got to call her and run after her, that's okay. And this kind of relates to jobs and careers. Here. this this whole
Communication,
being on
right?
the leash,
It's all about,
communication.
yeah, all
Yeah.
about communication. Yeah. Which, like you said earlier, it's kind of difficult to nail that because every conversation is different. And that's why, in terms of training somebody, they're going to always run into a situation where they may not know how to respond or how to take the conversation to a place that's going to help them meet their end goal for that conversation.
Mhm.
So, when you are communicating during networking, it's really important to prepare for a call and also to have an end result that you're looking for, because that's where you start that navigation process.
Yeah.
What do I need to say in order to, at the end of the call, that individual says, boy, I had no idea that you were really proficient in leading teams for X. And I think we're looking for somebody like that. Let me introduce you to that individual. Or you might have to ask, but you have to lead to that to make it so it's comfortable to ask. So you might have to say, you know, I shared with you some stories and I really know how to make an impact in this area. Who in your network can you introduce me to? So
Yeah.
having that as a goal and then working backwards, what do I need to do in order to prepare for this call so that I can get them to offer or I'm ready to ask?
Hmm.
Makes sense?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So that makes sense. That's how we should be doing things now. It's a great,
Mm-hmm.
framework roadmap you just laid out there. And one thing I was curious about though, what was your first job interview like? You getting your first job. What was it like? Like how you approached it, like what you talked about, how you presented yourself, what was that story?
Sure. Yeah. In fact, I would say that was my first attempt at networking too.
Mm.
Um, I wound up working for the very first Marriott hotel. It was in Washington, D.C. And those were the days where you'd look in the newspaper and find a position that you were interested in and then call them up. So that's what I did, but it was for a Ramada hotel. And I was interested maybe in working in personnel, which is HR today.
Mm.
So I met with her and we talked about what I love doing, what I'm really good at. She said, I really don't think that this is the right place for you, but I know over at the Marriott, they're looking for somebody in sales. So she gave me the person's name. I zipped on over and they had me do the whole fill out the application thing. I was right out of college. And I overheard the receptionist talking to the person I needed to meet with. And he was saying, she's filling out the application. Let her come back another day. I'm really busy. I've got a lot of things going. Now I was in another room filling out the application. So I got his name from somebody in my now network. And I went out there and I said, I'm here now. I'm filling out the application. Why don't we just take 15 minutes and get to know one another? Well, the interview went really well because I was promoting myself, talking about the value that I had, my history of being in sales. And I just remember him just sitting there with his mouth open. His jaw was dropped because he couldn't believe, I was assertive. And he offered me the job right on the spot. So that was my first job.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So how did you know that you want that to apply to a personnel job to do something in sales? Like,
Mm.
why did you choose
Mm.
that? How did you know that would be the right fit?
Well, I thought it would be the right fit, but I was 22 years old. So um,
Hmm.
I just knew I was good with people. I guess I had a different image of what they were doing. I didn't realize that in HR, it's not only dealing with people, but it's dealing with the law, regulations, standards, and things like that. I wouldn't have enjoyed that. And because I guess that came across in that initial interview over at the Ramada, she thought, no, I think this person needs to be out and about and talking to people.
Yeah.
But, I just went by what I enjoyed doing. And I think that today that's really important as you consider what your values are. And values can be what you value in a company, what your personal values are, and then also the value that you can contribute. So what I'm talking about when I talk about values, it's the ones that you can offer to a company to help them grow, to solve a problem or a challenge and make an impact. So it's really important to understand what your secret sauce is. What are the things that you do really well and that you enjoy? Even though you might enjoy other things or they come with the job, there are certain things that you just have a knack for, and recognizing that and identifying areas where it led to an impact or growth for the companies that you contributed to. Most people don't really get in touch with that. They don't take the time to get to know themselves. And especially younger or early career seekers, they get themselves in trouble because they start working for a company or a job and they realize that they really don't like what they're doing, right? So know thyself is really important.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah.
yeah. Well, how does that happen? Why do we get stuck in
Mhm.
jobs doing things that we don't really like to do? I'm going through this, and as entrepreneurs, we go through this, but the same applies to somebody getting a job. And when you're trying to get something, get a position, get a client, it's such difficult work where every single day you need to be going at it and you need to be applying for things. And there's that perfect ideal job that you want, that you're going after every day,
Mhm.
but then you do enough and then you get rejected enough times, or you don't hear back enough times, and you start to compromise. Well, I get this is kind of close. I'll apply for this one, and I'll start applying for these kinds of jobs, and you still keep your focus, but sometimes you compromise. But how, in your experience, like people that have gotten the jobs that they really want, what it you hear a lot about entrepreneurs, how there's that like graphic where, or a picture, a metaphor where someone's digging in the dirt and then they stop right before the diamond. That's what I feel like my life is a lot of times. That a lot of people, they just kind of give up right before. So
Right.
what are those factors that you think are there, that the people you've worked with and yourself that have had success, that really helps them to get that job that they want?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to approach it by saying that the current environment suggests that you just need to apply online, and that's how you find a job. Young people, early career seekers, they're taught that when they go to college. They apply online for a college, right? They don't know somebody in the admissions office who really likes them and is going to bring them in. They don't even know how to do that. So they apply to a lot of colleges, and then they consider the ones where they were accepted in. And so they're trained to do that. And the HR community is saying, we're going to make life easier for all these corporate managers, and we're going to take over this whole process. We're going to screen people for you. So everybody jumps on the bandwagon and they're applying online. And over the last couple of years, it's been pretty horrific with the number of people competing for that single position. So you have to do a lot of applications. And when you do that and you only get one or two replying, they might not be your ideal job, but you'll take it. You need it, right? And
Yeah.
by the way, even executives do this many times because they don't necessarily know the path forward for using their network
Mm.
and saying the right things so that they can create those opportunities for themselves. So they jump on the bandwagon of applying online and are abhorred when they get rejected because they know they're qualified. And so that's part of the problem, that you're just applying online. And let's face it, you're writing a resume. Most resumes don't they don't talk about the value and the skills that you have in relation to the job description. So there's a lot more notoriety going out about that to get people to start thinking about it, their value propositions. And what happens is you go through an applicant tracking system, you get kicked out of that. And those that make it through, they get to talk with a recruiter because the recruiter scanned the resume thinking that, okay, the ATS sent us this. And then they call you up to bring you in. But guess what? Recruiters don't make hiring decisions. So that's a path that
Mhm.
is really risky. And if you do get into a position where you are called in for interviews and you interview For the team, you are a risky hire because you didn't come in through a referral to the hiring manager. So you really increase your chances of getting hired when somebody introduces you or refers you. And that's really what you're going for the networking, and why your communication, knowing your value propositions, is really important.
Mm.
Okay. So
Yeah.
the other part of it, Ryan, is when you're interviewing and you only have a couple of potential opportunities, you're sure as heck not going to ask any questions that might be important to you, but might be threatening to them wanting to offer you a job.
Mm.
Okay. Like, for example, if you're going with a startup and you want to understand how much financial runway do they have. Now, you can find a lot out just by researching, and you should always research before an interview. But that HR or recruiter person that you're talking with may not have the information, may feel it's against company policy to share that. So you can get eliminated just by asking a question that somebody doesn't know the answer to, or they're told not to ask that.
Mm. That's interesting. So are there questions, if there are, like, what are the questions that you shouldn't ask in an interview?
Hmm. I think it depends on whether or not you have confidence, you've prepared, and if you have other opportunities in the wings, which of course adds to your confidence, or maybe even offers on the table, then you absolutely have to go for that opportunity that you really want and that's best for you. So, and it also depends on who you're interviewing with. If you're interviewing with a hiring manager and you're on your final interview and you've got two other offers that look good, but you really want to work for this company, there's a way to communicate to get a better understanding of where they're at financially. Um, what happened to the people that you're, or the person that you're replacing? What's their direction? So the good news is that asking those types of questions to a savvy leader who wants to hire the best and the people who are going to help them grow the company and stay the longest, they're going to like those questions. But if you're asking that at the early stages in a technical interview or with HR, so, it's a little bit too soon to be talking about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Is
Mhm.
there like a single, is there a question that you always should ask, or is there like a framework to think about the questions you should ask, or if there was only one, like, which one should it be?
Yes. What challenges are you faced with today that you need to get resolved in the next 90 days?
Mm. Yeah, that's a great question, because it can apply, like, no matter what job you're applying for, the whole company as a whole has to work together. So no matter what role you're in, you can figure out, yeah, that problem they're having, how you can fit in and help. And then that's something you could research too, right?
Right. You should have researched as much as you can, because a lot of times when you're dealing with somebody in a leadership position as well, they're not necessarily sure of the root cause of their challenge or why something isn't working. They know they've got the problem, but maybe through what you've seen through going online, reading articles that have come out, or quotes from the CEO, or what's being posted, like on a LinkedIn page or their PR, you might be able to deduce what they're lacking in. And that can come out, but you can at least prepare to respond to the things that you already have researched.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, a lot of times you have a limited amount of time with the people that you're interviewing with. So you want to get the most bang for your buck, and you want to make sure they understand your value to that role, all in that 30 minutes, while you're also developing rapport. So the structure, it's kind of an overall strategy that I recommend for an interview is you definitely want to do your research on the company and the people. If you know the people that you're going to be interviewing with, look at their website, the culture, their posts or PR, and then Google on the web to get an understanding. I mean, you could even say, what are some of the challenges of XYZ company or the industry? What are some of the industry trends? Get to know as much as you can. And when you go into that interview, my recommendation, especially if you're like a programmer, project manager, you want to establish how much time the meeting is set for. I understand we're going to be meeting for 30 minutes because you're setting those expectations. That means that they have to draw some conclusion of you, and you have to do a really good job of strategizing and steering the conversation. So,
Steering the conversation from your end.
steering, yeah, absolutely. Yes,
Uh,
empower yourself.
You're not just supposed to sit back there and just answer questions. You're supposed to be active. I'm
Yes.
serious because that's what I was, even,
Oh,
to this day, kind of now, I was thinking like, yeah, so, I mean, I know I could answer questions in a kind of fun way, but so what do you mean, like steer the conversation? Is that asking questions back, or is it something more specific?
well, steering the conversation toward what you want at the end, just like I talked about a networking conversation, which, by the way, is very good practice.
Yeah, less stress. You can like talk to somebody
Yes.
a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in the end, you want to leave with some commitment from them. We're going to introduce you to a couple of other people on the team. We'll be getting back to you in a week, those sorts of things. So, you want to get some next step, not just leave without knowing anything. So,
Okay.
initially, you want to find out what their challenges are. And then in that 20 minutes of back and forth, left over from the other, the introduction and things like that, you want to strategize as much as you can the interview. Interrogative interviews are really uncomfortable. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what
Yeah.
you're talking about.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, you might be judged more by the questions you ask than the way you answer a question.
Mm.
Especially the people that I'm working with, they're in a leadership position, right? So how are they demonstrating their confident leadership in that interview? And you ask open-ended questions. So have at least 5 open-ended questions prepared and interject them, again, keeping the time on your mind. How much time do we have here? Or at least save them for the end, because they're always going to ask, what are the questions do you have for us? Right? Open-ended questions, stir conversation. And you are prepared knowing your value, and you need to communicate anything you respond to a question with the way you would handle a situation or how you've handled something in the past, and be ready with a story or two of what happened.
Yeah.
Recommended is to look at the STAR method, which gives you a process for delivering a story. You describe a situation, the tasks involved, the actions you took, and what was the result? What was the impact of what you did there? And relate it to what they're trying to accomplish to overcome their challenges.
Mm.
It sounds really complex, I know, when I'm delivering it, but you get it with practice.
Yeah. The star method. That sounds great. Can you say those things, the parts of it again?
Yes, S is for situation. Well, we were in a situation where we needed to deliver a product in 6 months, and the technical team was 9 months out. So the T stands for tasks. So as a leader, what were my tasks in order to shorten that time frame? And you list maybe 3 or 4 major tasks. Just list them because you want to keep it high level. Then the actions that were taken, and then the result was we were able to deliver the new product in 5 months. So we were, 15% faster than what the requirement was. And that made a tremendous impact because the company was able to use that extra month of revenue from the product.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good stuff. Yeah, that's great. Because it's hitting all the pieces of the story, and each of those parts is specific. Like it's got some kind of tangibility to it. There's some kind of metric, a certain amount of time, the certain kind of task, the metric of the result. Like this is something that people get wrong with marketing all the time when it comes to promoting themselves on their profile, on a sales page, whatever it is they stay so broad and just saying like, helping leaders become, even like helping a leader become more compassionate and help even
Mm-hmm.
they communicate better, help your team be more productive. It's just they're very, high level types of ideas that aren't quantified, and then you can't see like what does it mean to be a more compassionate leader. That can mean anything. It's like, sure, you've got an
That's
idea. I
right.
just think of like some guy like hugging his employees or something. Like is that compassionate? It can be anything to anyone, and anyone can say that their method can help you be more compassionate. But if
Right.
you're saying that you're helping them to, maybe it could even be linked to saving more time, more productivity by having some kind of system that's saving them some hours every week so that they can come home to their families, like more loving, in a more loving, and
Mm-hmm.
show up for their families better in a more present and loving way, or something like that. Like
Right.
being more, yeah, specific, and then you can see what's actually going on with the result. And so, yeah, that's interviewing is and sales are very, very close together. It kind of is,
Yes,
right? They're kind of the same thing.
they they are. The one thing that I think the STAR method does when you're telling a story is you're creating a high level summary of what you've done, and you don't want to get into the details because remember you only have 30 minutes, right? But if the interviewer is interested, certainly they can ask for more details.
Yeah.
So yeah, so a lot of my clients, the people I work with, learn to tell stories and really understand the breadth of what that impact was for the company, which is usually cost savings, increased productivity, growth, able to invest more money in other programs because they have new sales revenue. So it's always going to be a contribution that was beneficial to the company and solved some problems. And but what's really important here is that when you deliver your value propositions, you and you're telling this story, that you don't get into the details and get lost in all the minutia because you just eat your time up. High level, and that's what leaders are expected to do. Deliver something high level. If they need more information, then they'll ask. You might have a 1 hour interview in front of you and not know it because they're interested. So
Mm.
then, in this back and forth, and you having your questions prepared, and you know what to really address because they've already shared their challenges, big challenges with you, then you're winding up the interview. And it's really important, and this is what I suggest, because you already know what your goal is. You want to get to that next step. Just getting up and leaving is not the way to do it. But to say, how do you feel about me as a candidate for this position? Especially when you're meeting the team. You've got maybe 3 engineers you're meeting, somebody in finance, and maybe the CEO, for example. Get a feel for if they have any questions, how do they feel about you working on the team? And they're going to measure it in terms of, does this person fit in the culture? Can this person really take us forward?
Yeah.
and you'll be more knowledgeable about where you stand when you leave.
Yeah. That's a great idea. And I want to ask how you suggest someone do that. Um, so I do something similar in sales calls is kind of near the end after I kind of say, kind of propose what I think should be done, what the best thing for them to do is as far as taking action, or even if after like I present a plan to them, then I'll do a temp check from 1 to 10.
Mhm.
How do you feel about this plan and if it could work for you? And it's just an amazing question because if they're sitting at 7 or below, then you say, okay, gotcha. So, what would get you to an 8, 9, or a 10? What would get you to an 8 or a 9? A 10, nobody really can maybe ever get to a 10, but what would get you up to an 8 or a 9? And then those are the objections that come up, and then you
Mhm.
can address those objections. But typically,
Mhm.
people just want to, don't want to shut you down or have conflict, like tell you why it won't work. They're in a sales conversation. They just want to end the call and have time to think about it later. But if you do a temp check, then they can say, oh, well, I don't know if I have enough time to do this. And they're
Yeah.
saying, and maybe you didn't talk about how much time the program takes with you. And say, oh, well, this is something you can actually do. It only takes 30 minutes a day doing this and you'll be good. Like, oh, okay, really? Well, I don't know if I have the money. Oh, well, you can definitely do some kind of payment plan, or pay some now, pay the rest later. Like, that's no problem. And it's like,
Mhm.
and if you address that right then you can, while the momentum is there, while you're in rapport, then you're so much easier to make a sale and get people to move. And it's not about being tricky. It's not about manipulation. It's just like, this is relationships. This is, you're in the heat
Yeah.
of the moment, and you need to help people get across the line. It's so hard to get people to move and change the status quo, that if you can address these things in the right way, that's good sales. It's just creating the environment for a relationship to happen, and it's incredibly difficult to do sometimes. So yeah,
Yeah,
how
very
do you bring that
true.
up in an interview? Yeah.
I would just, so you got your 30 minutes and you're winding down. They've asked their questions, you've asked your questions. And they said, do you have any other questions? Yeah, I want to find out, how do you feel about me being in this role based on what you've learned so far?
Yeah, just the way you said it. It's like, hey, yeah, okay, go, yeah, let me see.
Right,
Maybe
right.
I think I should. Yeah, I think I
Yeah,
feel good. Okay.
yeah. I just read a post, a series of comments where people were really disgusted with the company because they went through multiple interviews and they never heard back. And they think it's so unfair. And I have to agree with them. And HR would say, we had 2,000 applicants. What do you expect? Well, I expect professionalism. You're going to hire me because you're looking for somebody professional. I want to work for a company that's also professional.
Yeah.
So, I don't think that that's a good way to let a company off the hook, and because it's not considerate, especially some people take time off from work to prepare and go on multiple interviews. You deserve communication. And one other hint that I suggest, now again, you have to be confident and assert yourself, but say you get into an interview, you started out with talking with other people, in HR is involved in most companies. Say you get in an interview with the hiring manager, and I hope you do, because that's the person that's going to make the decision. Um, it's okay, in my opinion, to say, if I have any further questions, may I contact you directly?
Hmm. Yeah.
And you may get a yes, you may get a no, you may, maybe they didn't like that question, who knows?
Oh, we'll contact you. Yeah, we'll
Right.
contact you because
Yeah. I'm going to
I think
send
I've gotten
HR to
that.
call you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, don't worry. Like, we'll be in touch. I hate that. Where it's like, oh, we'll get
Right.
to you, because then it's like you're shut down. Then you can't even really ask
Exactly.
anything. I
Yep.
think I've been told directly for job interview things like, hey, don't contact us. Like, we'll get in touch with you if we think you're a right fit. And
Right.
then you feel even bad about following up because you're not really supposed to, and that really sucks
Right.
because you're just waiting.
Right.
Yeah.
So the counter to that, which is really what I aspire with my clients, in a partnership, because it really is a partnership. And we offer this. learning in two ways. One is one-on-one, where it's completely interactive, and the other is I have an online course. But, there's a difference in how people want to operate, online course versus one-on-one. When you are a confident leader, you're going to not spend as much time applying online because it's very reactive. You're going to be proactive. And when you're a leader, you've been developing your network for years. Why would you not use your network to go and find those opportunities and go to the right people, say the right things? It's not a matter of picking the phone up and saying, "Hey, Ryan, how you doing? It's been 4 years. I just lost my job," or "I think we're going to have a merger. I'm looking for a job right now." You don't want to do that because you diminish the value of the relationship when you do that. You want to show that you expect this relationship call to be a win-win, and you must prepare for that call in order to make it so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are those? What are the okay, well, let's see. What has stayed the same as far as the way that people were networking and getting jobs, say when you got your first job to now? Because this, again, making this link to marketing, it's good marketing, good sales, good copywriting. All the best copywriters study other copywriters that have been writing stuff that were writing stuff in like the 1850s, 1860s. Like, we're going all the way back studying the way that people were advertising and writing copy, because there are these timeless principles that stay the same. And I think a lot, like today, especially with information moving so fast and people wanting quick tricks and tips and gaming the system and all of that, it's like, I know it works to some extent, but you've got to have these base skills. But how about this? What is like the most timeless skill that you can learn the quickest? Like, if there's that one thing that maybe everyone's missing, but it's like the one place that you should really start, and you're gonna, instead of falling to all the tricks, like, what's that thing you gotta just get better at now, like as specific as you can be?
Knowing what you can bring to the table, your own value, what you're good at. And in terms of skills, it would be communication skills.
Is there a more specific part even about what you bring to the table? Because everyone can say, yeah, I'm a great tech guy and I'm great at, I don't know, I'm great at coding. Like, is that good enough? Like, is that bringing it to the table? Like, what do you mean exactly?
Okay, that's a good question. It's the result of what you bring to the table. So, for example,
Yeah. Okay.
for example, I'm really great at coding. I really enjoy doing it, and as a result, I'm very quick. So I produce more end results in half the time than what other people do in my department. So I get a lot more done, and the company really likes that because I'm very productive. And I know you're introducing a new product and you have a very fast timeline. And I think that's going to be very important to you.
Nice. Yeah, that's good. That makes sense. It's like, yeah, I'm great at coding, but I'm quick. I was in the top 10% of the rest of my colleagues when I was working there. The only reason, I couldn't, I had to, I was like let go. It was like a layoff or something like that. But I was one of the fastest coders out there, and I won the company-wide hackathon, 2 years before that. And I know you got this project coming up that you guys are a startup, so you need to get things out fast, you need to test things quickly. So I can definitely be someone that has a kind of build in public. Build now, break stuff quickly. Google, I don't know
High
who said that. Like,
performer,
build things
high
and break
performer.
things.
Yeah.
High performance mindset. So I'm your
Yes.
guy.
Yeah,
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 that's it's the result. That was a great way to put it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And when it comes to a leader, they're going to share different things, like the programs, the multiple programs that they ran. They're adopting, or how they are rolling out AI technology and not letting go of people, but able to increase their staff be,
Hmm.
to generate new revenue.
Huh. So very contextual, huh? So it's so important to do that research and see,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, see where they're at in that moment. What is that immediate need? Hmm. Yeah,
Right.
like so
Mm-hmm.
I'm working with the client, and he is doing something pretty unique and reaching out to colleges to help their sports teams elevate their mindsets so they can perform better on the field. And one thing that we're doing is we're looking at all the local kind of colleges and universities in the area and seeing, okay, out of all the teams there, which one is the most important to them, and which ones, and what have their records been like in the past 5, 10 years. If there's a school that was maybe winning everything 10 years ago, but now they're struggling, that's going to be a good indication of a school that maybe they spend some time and they want to win again, and we can bring up how they used to be great and had these great players, and maybe we can figure out why things haven't been working that well. And if we can just meet them there with that information, that's enough of a hook, and so that they feel like you really understand them, maybe
Yep.
even better than they understand themselves and what they're
Mm-hmm.
going through. And it just positions you as the expert.
Right.
um, yeah, just so finding that gap, being intentional about who you're really reaching out to. It's a gamble, right? Because you can't move as fast. You cannot move as fast with your applications. You can't send out as many applications if you're
You have
doing
no
research.
control. You have no control. It's a lottery. I was just reading a post that, well, I had mentioned earlier about people so frustrated, hundreds of applications, and they're not getting called, and they're really qualified. But, they never even made it to the HR department to have a look see. But that's such an ineffective way to look for a job. So let me give you some other examples. If you, I work with a lot of technology and operations executives, some in the C-suite. Now, if they apply online, what is the underlying message about their leadership when they do that?
Just like one of the others, just
That's
the
right.
one in a
They're not,
million. They don't care that much.
or they're not, there's a confidence issue to not be able to do it a different way.
Hmm.
And I have worked with amazing leaders who do 3-year roadmaps on AI, dealing with the unknown. They've concluded a lot of programs that had high impact to the company. But when it comes to their own personal strategy, they're not necessarily sure of the things they need to do. Sometimes they pick up the phone and they talk with people, but it's crickets. But it's the way you conduct that conversation to get other individuals to advocate for you that is a real skill. And to be able to have the confidence to reach out to them. So I'm going to give you a real situation that's an example. Um, a lot of times when I work with executives who are online networking and reaching out to their network, people that are maybe first degree connections they've never met, or people that they've known for years, maybe haven't been in touch, what they do is they'll message them and say, hey, I see you've been promoted to XYZ. You're running your own company, as an example. And I'm really impressed with what you've done. I'd love to have a conversation to learn more about your situation and how you did it. Now, that person, he's a busy CEO. He's got a lot of time. He'd really like to talk with that other individual, but it's definitely not on the priority list. So what happens in a case like that is somebody who's in a leadership position reaches out to somebody else in a leadership position because they're kind of looking for another opportunity. And the person reaching out kind of becomes a subordinate in their communication. They talk about what they would love to do. They talk about how impressed they are with the other person, and yet they want their time, right, to have a meeting. So an alternate way to reach out to that individual is do a little research, find out what they've done, and see where you can notice some challenges their company might be having. And if it falls within your area of expertise where you can help, you can reach out to that individual and say, John, it's been years since we've spoken. It's cool that you started your own company, and I've been following it and learning more about what you're doing. I saw one of your quotes in a PR piece, and you talked about a challenge of X. I have a lot of experience that's been highly successful in my company. Let's set up a time so that we can discuss your challenge, and maybe I can be a good resource for you. You don't say love, you don't say how impressed you are, and you talk about how you're going to help them.
Yeah.
You have a much better chance of them opening the door for you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. Definitely. That's right. Just trying to, it's got to have some kind of benefit for them. It's like, sure, it's flattering if someone says, hey, I'd love to learn about what you're doing. And, can I have some of your time? And it's like, well, I could do that to be a good person, but I'm really just going to spend my time to give, and I'm already busy. And, but if somebody approaches with helping to solve a potential problem that they have, it's just totally flips the script. It's totally about,
Yeah.
they want to get on this call so that they can improve their business, improve whatever it is they have going on. And that's,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's like, maybe they really have that problem, maybe not. And if they don't really have a need or the problem, well, it's definitely a much better approach than just kind of begging to get on a call and kind of network.
Begging.
I'm really just not a fan of networking calls just to do it. Like, there's a lot of coaches, consultants I talk to,
Mm-hmm.
and networking calls, it is cool and great to do that. I do it all the time in person here now, but it's not good to do that in the sake of trying to get business, because there's no
Mm-hmm.
intention there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you're niching down in your business. It's sure, when you niche down, you're going to polarize, and there's going to be a lot of people that you're going to turn away because they're not for that specific thing you're talking about. But at least the ones that you do get, that there is an opportunity there for you to work together and do something. So it sounds like it's the same with kind of career seeking and sales, is that, yes, you're going to offer something specific to kind of help them out. And if they don't really care about that, then, well, are they really going to be able to help you get a job anyway if they're not interested in this kind of skill you can bring to the table? Probably not. And so it's just a much better, more intentional approach. That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, when you have a call with somebody that you worked with before, they may not be a hiring manager or a decision maker. You should still always have something to give that person, an introduction, an article, whatever that that based on what they're doing, they would have interest in. But in that case, you could explain, hey, I'm thinking about making a move. I really want to focus on X because I do that really well and I want to do more of it. Who in your network could you introduce me to? So networking is can be a great conversation, a lot of give and take, but asking for something in the end, I think, is really a good thing to do. And you'll reciprocate. So you could say, who in your network could you introduce me to?
Yeah.
You never know where that next lead is going to come from. Hey, I was just playing golf with my friend and they were talking about needing, really savvy marketing guy. And, maybe I can introduce you to him. And that next person is going to be ready to take your call. I'll give you an example. when I've been helping Rutgers, they're biomedical scientists for about over 8 years now. They have a special program where they teach academics, PhDs, how to move into working for a business like some of the pharmaceutical companies. And it's a fantastic program. They get exposed to networking, career readiness skills like resume writing and things like that. And my work is to help them with their LinkedIn profile and um, promoting their value. And now these are people that have spent all their time applying online. And it's amazing how many of them have found new roles by incorporating all this information. But how did I get into that program? Calling universities, and you'll find this out with your new, with your client. It's very bureaucratic. I got introduced by somebody that I knew. And in the first phone call I made when we had our discussion, she said, I'm in. Let's work a plan so that I can get you in front of the students. And it's been going on for 8 years, this
Wow.
relationship. Yeah. So
Wow.
doors open when your communication skills are well, you communicate your value, and the other person connects the dots so they really get what your expertise is.
Yeah.
Then you give them some information that they can use to think about you and who would be a good fit for you to talk with.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Yeah, just planting those seeds. And yeah, I love the idea of the next connection too. That's,
Yeah.
thinking about that now. That's happened many times. It's I'm talking to somebody and I'm like, oh, well, yeah, this person isn't quite, I don't know, a person that would be a client or something. And then they
Hmm.
say something about, oh, there's somebody else that I might know. And I'm like, oh yeah, it can be, you can meet anyone. Everybody knows somebody who might be
Right.
something good,
Right.
like just that one, just making that connection. If you, yeah, are intentional about it, communicating the value, and then asking if they know